You have, is it
1 minute to air. We're streaming.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon here in the Bull City. We would like to call the Durham City Council work session to order on this, the 21st day of April at 1 o'clock. We are here in our first floor council chambers in City Hall Plaza. Would like to welcome those of you who are joining us today in person, as well as those who are joining us remotely. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor O'Neill.
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton has received an excused absence for this meeting. Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
And Councilmember Williams is running a couple minutes late. He'll be here momentarily.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started this afternoon. And our first order of business will be any announcements by council. All right, Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to remind everyone that the deadline to register to vote for the primary election is tomorrow, April 22nd. If you are not registered to vote and you don't register by that deadline, you can still vote. You can do same-day registration and vote early during the early voting period. But if you want to register and vote on election day, you have to register by that deadline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Johnson. Councilwoman Freeman? And then followed by Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And that does bring to mind that early voting will start next week, Thursday, and that is phenomenal. I did want to just take a moment and acknowledge that the Equitable Food-Oriented Development Partnership conversation is occurring at Duke World Food Policy Center with Communities in Partnership and Duke's Sanford School for Public Policy. And I wanted to just take a moment and welcome Dr. Jewel H. Barana, I'm messing the last name up, our USDA Deputy Secretary of Agriculture for the USDA, being here today in Durham. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman. Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to flag for council members and the mayor. Lakeisha and Rachel have worked diligently to find a time for everyone to be able to meet around ARPA. And there should be a tentative invitation on your calendars for Tuesday, May 17th from 2 to 3:30. Excuse me, I'm sorry, Wednesday, May 18th from 2 to 3. And so I just wanted to flag that. Again, it's Wednesday, May 18th from 2 to 3.
Thank you so much for that. Just want to give a shout out this afternoon to Lincoln Community Health Center. I was over there about a half hour, 45 minutes earlier today. That is a great operation. They are doing a wonderful job over there with 9 sites. And I just wanted to give a shout out to all of those hardworking folk over at Lincoln Community Health Center. I also wanted to mention to folk that I am starting a tour of small businesses. I did some of that on yesterday, spent about 4 hours with Susan Amy We toured some businesses over in the Lakewood Shopping Center. I met some of those business owners that's over there, and went to East Durham to meet some of those business owners over there. So we give a shout out to them. Hopefully coming soon, I will be going across the city to meet with various small business owners, and not going to say that I'm neglecting the larger ones. We're just starting there first. So giving a shout out to all those folk, and thank you all for your hard work in the Bull City. So we now
Recording in progress.
will recognize our city manager for any priority items she may have.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of the Durham City Council. I do have a couple of priority items for you this afternoon. Agenda item number 12, the Upper Neuse River Basin Association, UNRBA, fiscal year 2023 budget is a 20-minute presentation that will be made today by staff. And the second item is agenda item number 19, Forever Home Durham, fiscal year 2022 update, is also a 20-minute presentation. And this is a supplemental item that was added for your agenda today.
Thank you, Manager Page. You have now heard the manager's priority items. I'm ready to entertain a motion to accept those.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilwoman Freeman and seconded by Councilwoman Johnson. If we have a voice vote today, that will be fine, I believe. I'm looking at my attorney to make sure that's fine for a voice vote. All those in favor, you have the sign of saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed have the same right. Hearing none, that motion passes unanimously, and we say good afternoon to Councilman Williams. You have now diversified us a little bit. Appreciate your presence today, sir. All right, now we're going to turn to our city attorney and to recognize Attorney Rayburn. So glad to see you back here. You know, I just have to keep saying that.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor. It's good to see you as well. Good to see you all, members of City Council. The City Attorney's Office does not have any priority items today. However, I would like to take a point of personal privilege, if it's okay,
Sure.
to introduce the newest member of our staff, Carlos Hernandez. If you could come up to this lectern really quickly. Carlos is a new Assistant City Attorney who joined us on April 4th. And I just wanted you all to put a face with probably a name you're going to be seeing quite a bit, because Carlos is going to be the primary counsel addressing our ARPA grant-funded contracts that will be coming forward. He's also going to be the new general counsel for our community development department as well, which is quite busy. And then he will be working collaboratively with Fred Lamar, Senior Assistant City Attorney, who's going to be a team lead for contracts, real property group within the office. So Carlos, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm Carlos Hernandez. I'm raised here in North Carolina since the age of 4. Made Durham my home in 2007 when I studied at Central School of Law. Graduated there and worked for some local firms until I started my own practice about 10 years ago, focusing mostly on the underserved Hispanic community of the Triangle. I have a decade-long relationship with El Centro Hispano and other nonprofits in the area, and I look to hopefully bring that experience to help Durham continue to succeed in its goals.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Welcome. We're always happy to see a legal eagle. I know you come well prepared for the job, and thank you for applying, and thank you for bringing another legal eagle above board. We're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
All right, we will now turn to our city clerk to see if she has any priority items for today.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. I did want to request that item 14, the Durham Vaccine Equity Project, be referred back to the city clerk's office.
I'm sorry, if you would repeat that again for me.
I would like to request that item number 14, the Durham Vaccine Equity Project, be referred back to the city clerk's office.
All righty.
I'd like to make a motion that item 14 be referred back to the city clerk's
Is
office.
there a second?
Second.
Right, it has been moved by Councilwoman Freeman and seconded by Councilwoman Caballero that this matter be referred back. Are we ready for a voice vote? All of those would sign by saying aye, would vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed have the same right. Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we will move to our second order of business today, and that is to read the administrative consent items. And we will then follow that with reading our departmental items, reading our presentations for today, and reading our public hearing items. So we are going to read, and also our citizen matters. So we will be reading through the entire agenda at this time. The first order of business on the administrative consent items is the approval of city council minutes. Item number 2, the Human Relations Commission appointments. Item 3, building permits and inspections, performance audit, March 2022. Item 4, to select applicants for the at-large council vacancy and forward to the interview stage, and I believe that has been pulled by Ms. Brenda Pollard. Item 5 would be the appointments to the Civilian Police Review Board. Item 6, the City County Planning Department FY23 Work Program. Item 7, a fuel surcharge for taxicab operators. Item 8, master service agreement to CITI Incorporated for 2022-2025 on-call supervisory control and data acquisition SCADA services. Item 9, the March 2022 bid report. Item 10, refunding of general obligation bonds, Series 2012A, 2012C, 2012D, and issuance of general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2022. Item 11, contract SW-86C, request for qualifications for inspections for PW Street maintenance repairs. Item 12, the Upper Neuse River Basin Association FY 2023 budget. Item 13, utility extension agreement with Pocket Partners LLC to serve Rosewalk Club Boulevard. We are now turning to our presentations. Item 14 has been referred back, and we now turn which is Durham Vaccine Equity Project, and we now turn our attention to our public hearings, beginning with item 15, closing of Newkirk Street and portions of May Street and Sanders Avenue. Item 16, closing of unnamed alley off East Lawson Street. Item 17, the consolidated annexation, Griffin Place. Item 18, the Limited Obligation Bond Series 2022. We have presentations at this time on the agenda, which would be item 19, Forever Home, Durham FY 2022 update. And that will be what I have. Madam, for our entire agenda, Madam Mayor, Manager, here's what I have for the pull items. We have pulled item number 4, pulled by Ms. Brenda Pollard, and then we have presentations. And we also have 2 citizens who will be speaking for us or with us today to us. Mr. Jesse Gibson, Mr. James Chavis will be speaking to us as well. And we will have those 2 presentations, which will be the Upper Neuse River Basin Association. And we also have a presentation of the Forever Home. Is that what you have as well?
Yes, ma'am.
All righty. There we go. Now we will turn to our citizens for their opportunity to speak with us today. We will have Mr. James Chavis, who will have 3 minutes to speak to us, and he will be followed by Mr. Jesse Gibson, who also will have 3 minutes to speak to us. And thank you both for coming in person today.
Good afternoon to the mayor and city council members. My name is James Chavis. My address is 2813 Ash Street, Apartment B, Durham, North Carolina 27703. I come to speaking to you all today because there is still racial prejudice and racial doing in the city of Durham. And it's not just started. It has started back. And 2 of you, the mayor and one of your councilmen, are not aware about this problem because you wasn't here to vote on it or have anything to say about it. But you're going to be knowing about it, and you need to be updated. And it goes back. Everybody do not know that Hoover Road over there is part of a black slave land. And that land was bought by Durham. And we're talking about the roller, the skating rink. Well, it come to pass to us, and it started way back then, and Ms. Freeman knows because she was a part of it, that when Long Meadows started breaking down, we asked Durham Park and Recreation to go to the CIP money and get it to fix it all the way back up. But they only patched it. But then during this COVID time, they found out there was money in there to go over there and buy that land. And they bought it without any of us citizens knowing about it. And it's in Pat 1, District 1. Which I represent as the co-facilitator now. So, I want you to see how it makes us feel that worked way back then to try to keep Long Meadows up to par, and how some of our still prejudiced white folks go and buy their property where was slave worked on without even letting us. Not only that, once they bought it, the community over there asked it to be named Merton Moore. They still have not got their reason why they did not name it Merton Moore. The PAC even asked. We still haven't got that name. You see how racially things are done and why I'm calling racial? Look who's in charge. Wade is in charge. and he has been approached with this. I'm black and he's white, so you can see why I'm calling it racial. You may not like it, but guess what? It's what it is. Number two is, we just got out to find out that Long Meadows is in cahoots with this project. But guess what? We don't know how. But I tried to meet with Jackie Turner, and she supposed to came to the PAC meeting this past Saturday and to bring us some information. But she told a lie on me, and I'm not going to accept it. Because if you lie on me, I'm allowing you back.
Thank you, Mr. Chavis.
And I wish, before I quit, I'd like to set up a townhouse meeting, and for the two city council and the mayor, I hope y'all can attend, because until this can be corrected, we still black folks gonna be looking at slavery from others. Thank you.
Mr. Chavis. Mr. Gibson, you will have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll be brief. I won't use the entire 3 minutes. My concern has been and will continue to be that you find a way, especially with the city attorney, to enhance the functioning and monitoring of the city Citizen Review Board. I understand that North Carolina statutes imposes some limitations on what it can and cannot do, but nevertheless, I think it needs to be strengthened, because we know nationally, state and local wise, that internal affairs within the law enforcement city agency tends to be biased in favor of misconduct in terms of investigating local officer and supervising administration of justice with respect to arrest and detention of Durham citizens. So I am asking the council to review model citizen review local ordinances in North Carolina and the state to see how we can strengthen the Citizen Review Board to do a more effective review of citizens' complaints against local law enforcement. I respect the police department, administrators and officers on the street who put their lives on the line each day to protect our safety. However, there are renegade policemen, police officers, police women who don't follow the guidelines and stipulations imposed on them by North Carolina state law, as well as city policy. So I'm encouraging the council to look at its current Citizen Review Board and find ways to draft and approve policy that are more equitable to citizen complaints against law enforcement. So I would like for you to report to the PAC and to the community within the next 60 days a review and outcomes of the current Citizen Review Board as it's presently constituted, as well as the policy, to see how you can come up with more policies and guidelines that will promote an equitable review of citizens' complaint against police misconduct. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. We appreciate your comments today. I do want to take note on item 17. We have Ms. Wanda Adams and Ms. Pamela Andrews, who are in, I think, on Zoom and have requested that this item be pulled. we are having presentations on those two items today. I'm sorry, public hearings on those two items today. Okay, go ahead and tell it. I'll ask our attorney to address how it's supposed to be handled. That way I won't get it wrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Agenda item number 17 is a public hearing, and the council does not receive comments at work sessions regarding public hearings because you will receive them when the matter is heard. So we're not going to have ex parte communications outside the public hearing.
Okay, so they would need to return for comments
On Monday,
on Monday
when it's heard.
when it's heard. Ms. Allen and Ms. Andrews, if you're still in the queue, if you would acknowledge by the raising of your virtual hand that you have heard that we will be able to receive your comments if you return and sign up on Monday evening,
Whatever the first meeting, May 2nd.
May 2nd.
Correct. And I will also add that the planning department did catch that these individuals were trying to speak today, and they reached out to those individuals to let them know that comments could not be received at the work session.
Okay, all right. Do you see them in the queue just in case, Madam Clerk? They are. Okay. If you would, Ms. Allen and Ms. Andrews, if you would just for the record raise your virtual hand that you have received that information that you will be able to speak on this matter on May 2nd at the 7 o'clock meeting, and they would need to sign up for that particular session to do so. Is there a particular sign up, Madam Clerk, that they have to conform with, so we will make sure that they have all the information that they need to do that?
We will ensure that they have that information, Madam Mayor.
All
But
right.
they are not raising their hands at the moment.
They did raise them, though.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, Carmisha Wallace, City Manager's Office. We also have a gentleman here in the audience who also had interest in that particular public hearing. So the public hearing that's being referenced is scheduled for the May 2nd City Council meeting, and the agenda for that meeting will be published on Thursday, on Thursday, April the 28th. So at that point, anyone who's interested in speaking on a public hearing item on May 2nd will have the ability to register via the Zoom link that will be located at the top of the meeting agenda. Or there's also the option to come in person and sign up on May 2nd, the day of the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. We appreciate that. All right, we will now return to our pulled items, and we have one pulled item and one speaker for that item. That is item number 4, to select applicants for the at-large council vacancy and forward to the interview stage. And Ms. Pollard, I would recognize you at this time for and you have 3 minutes.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, ma'am, we are able to hear you.
Oh, thank you. This is Brenda Pollard at 1902 Cedar Street, Durham, North Carolina. It's a personal privilege. Thank you, Madam Mayor and the City Council members. I want to thank you first for your leadership. I want to thank you for the protocol and the process and the leadership for those in the city to apply for the vacancy. And that is why I wanted to speak today. I won't take more of your precious time, but as a citizen for 36 years, I've been humbled and honored to be able to speak to you today. And thank you very much for allowing us to serve our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Pollard. We appreciate you coming today and speaking to us virtually. I do want to talk a little bit about more of the process to moving towards the interview stage. As you all have before you at your desk is a total of votes received for those applicants that was provided to us by our clerk. I will ask that you review those, and we have a discussion as to how many people you would like to interview from this list. Meaning, are we moving towards the top 4 persons, the top 3 persons? If if you take a moment to review, and then we will open the floor for discussion amongst all of us. Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do believe in the past, we've done the top 3 to 5, was it? And so just looking at the way that the breakdown is, the top 1, 2, 3, 4, top 4 have at least 4 votes. And I think that would probably be the best way to kind of move forward, at least, noting if you had 4 folks on the council, that's a majority. We could move forward with those interviews.
Councilwoman Johnson, I know that you and Mayor Pro Tem headed these proceedings, so I would ask for your comments next.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Councilmember Freeman's suggestion of interviewing the top 4 candidates is good, and I think we'll have plenty of time in the meetings that we scheduled to have thorough interviews with those 4 folks.
Councilwoman Caballero, I look to you as another senior who's done this before, another senior council person who's done this before, for your comments.
Yeah, considering that all 4 of those folks have a majority, I think it's probably the cleanest, and we're not trying to swap trades or to move other folks forward.
Councilman Williams, I'm sorry, so many women up here today. Now I look to you and get your comments, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Harry back, please. No, I'm in agreement, that's fine.
All right, I think we have a unanimous decision today of moving forward with the 4 top candidates. If you will all just sign by saying aye so that we have it verbally for the record. All those sign that we interview the top 4 candidates, would you sign by saying aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So we will interview the top 4 vote getters. And Madam Clerk, I believe that you indicated that you would announce those now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The top 4 applicants, the first is Dr. Monique Holsey-Hyman. The second, Nate Baker. The third is Shenqua Nicole Diggs. And the 4th is Henry C. McCoy, Jr.
Are we all in agreement that those will be the top 4 names? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. All right. All right, now the process after that, I'll turn that back over to Councilwoman Johnson to give us a preview of where we're going next.
Sure. So at our next meeting that we scheduled for interviews, I'm sorry, I can't remember the date right now. Maybe the clerk has it handy.
May 2nd.
May 2nd. We will invite the candidates to be interviewed right at 4 p.m. We should decide if we want them to be in person or virtual. Question. And we've got 2 hours scheduled for interviews and for candidates. So we'll be able to do 30 minutes with each candidate. And then did we decide to vote? Oh, right. And then we're doing a public hearing on Tuesday the 3rd at 6 p.m. So then the candidates would be invited to bring folks from the community who support their candidacy to speak at a public hearing before the council. And then we would vote on those folks at the next work session, was that correct? On Thursday, the 5th at 1 p.m. And they could be sworn in immediately if we choose.
Apologies, sorry. I think that swearing them in at the work session is probably the best way forward. to get them seated as quickly as possible if folks are comfortable with that.
I am comfortable with that. Thumbs up. Anybody not?
Yeah, then they have the opportunity to hear the work session items before they're expected to vote on them at the next meeting. So I think that, yeah, it's reasonable. So yeah, I mean, if we're all still good with the schedule, I think the only question is whether we ask the candidates to be in person for interviews on Monday, the 2nd.
Since we meet in person right now, my preference would be that they interview in person, but that's just me.
I'm thumbs up with
That's me too.
thumbs up for the man. All right.
Madam Mayor, I
Okay.
have one other clarifying question if possible. With the public hearing, are we anticipating folks coming? In the past, what folks did is that they asked supporters to come. Each supporter got a few minutes, and we kind of maybe capped it per applicant so that there weren't 50 people for one so we weren't here all evening, just to be candid. So we will have to determine at that point how many speakers each applicant is allowed, and also if we want that public hearing, if we want folks on Zoom, or if we want them here, or is it up to each person how they want to proceed?
I'll turn to Councilwoman Johnson for some comment on that.
Sure. My recommendation would be to have the public hearing hybrid, so have folks be able to come in person or on Zoom, and to have a maximum, since we have 4 candidates, and say we give each speaker 3 minutes, we probably don't want to go more than 2 hours, so have a maximum of maybe 8 people that could speak on their behalf. Does that sound reasonable to folks?
Thumbs up.
So they could each bring up to 8 community members to support their candidacy.
We didn't.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You couldn't hear that part.
I was gonna say, or they could at least do 10 people for 2 minutes, but yeah,
Sure, I mean, we could say you have 30 minutes and you can divide it up however you like.
sounds good to me.
Yeah, and give them a little bit more flexibility, or we could, or we could say 3 minutes, maximum 10 people, something like that.
I'm okay with either way. I'm just looking for the
I think the maximum 10 people,
30 minutes. Max
Allows
time,
folks
30 minutes. Max people, 10.
And they can mix it up how they like.
Yes.
Sure,
Okay.
that sounds great.
I think our clerk has her hand raised for comment as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a question or a point of clarification for Tuesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. It was originally discussed that council would make their selection that evening. Did you want a couple days to think about it and then make your selection at the work session? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'll turn to
Seeing
Councilwoman Johnson for
some thumbs up for a couple of days to think about it.
a couple of days to think about it. Thumbs up.
Great.
All right,
So-
thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll make the selection we'll put that on the work session agenda and then have the swearing in at the work session as well.
So just to make sure, okay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, and then I'll ask my question.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Just if Madam Clerk can also just alert that those 4 interviewees should be present at that work session so that they know what their responsibilities are through the process. Thank you.
So, Councilwoman Johnson, I'm going to look to you to kind of summarize what we've said so that the public is clear.
Will do. So our next step is that we will interview our 4 top candidates at 4 p.m. on Monday, May 2nd. We will then have a public hearing on Tuesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m., where each candidate is invited to have residents, community members speak on their behalf. They have 30 minutes total for those residents to speak and may bring a maximum of 10 community members to support them. And those community members are welcome to appear virtually or in person for that public hearing. Then 2 days later, on Thursday, May 5th at 1 p.m. at our work session, we will vote on the appointment, and our newest colleague will be sworn in at the beginning of that work session so that they can begin their duties.
When should are we asking residents who are coming to speak in support of the applicants to register with the city clerk, or are we expecting them to just show up?
Madam Clerk, which would you prefer?
I prefer that people register in advance.
Do you have a preferred method for that? Do you want to set up a system online or something?
I'll set up a system.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I think the virtual will be fairly easy to coordinate, and then I'll coordinate with the in-person speakers.
Okay.
No
So,
worries.
yeah, I mean, would you like each candidate to send you a list of their speakers or something like
Yes.
that? Okay,
That would be great.
okay. We can communicate that to the candidates. Who is communicating to the candidates?
I will.
You
I'll
are,
reach
okay.
out
So
to
you
them
can communicate that
to let them know they're finalists.
Great.
Madam Clerk, could we also just give them a deadline of when they need to register their folks for that?
Sure.
So that folks know, get your people registered by whatever date works for the clerk's office.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And I know that it's on your radar, but I just want to make sure we state it clearly that we should make sure translation is available.
Madam Clerk, could we have interpretation for both the interviews and the public hearing?
It's been
Thank you.
arranged.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
And just to make sure, in case they are hearing, Dr. Monique Hosey Hyman, Mr. Nate Baker, Miss Shaniqua Nicole Diggs, and Dr. McCoy. Our clerk will be in touch with you to give you those updates, and so that you will have plenty of time to get ready for the next step of the process. I'd also like to thank Councilwoman Johnson and Mayor Pro Tem Middleton for their work in leading us through this part. It's been a smooth ride, and we really, really appreciate that. And we also want to appreciate our clerk, who keeps us moving forth in this process as well. So thank you all for a job well done so far. It's been a smooth process, so thanks. And we also have to thank all of the candidates out there. We had a lot of interest from citizens all over Durham. We had a total of 21. As I moved out and about, we've gotten calls, we've gotten comments on email, we've seen people in person. So the democracy in Durham is vibrant and doing well, and so we thank you all who have participated thus far in this endeavor, and we ask that you continue to do so as this person will be joining us in doing the people's business of Durham. So the more people that we have, of the 330,000 plus involved in this process, the more voices makes for a better council. So thank you all to the Durham public out there at large for your participation. All right. I think now we are ready to move to our next item of business, which will be to hear our presentations. Am I correct? Okay. And we have two presentations, I believe, this afternoon. And so we're just going to call both of those, so just so that you know what's coming. The first one is item number 12, which is the Upper Neuse River Basin Association UNRBA FY 2023 budget. And then we will also have a hearing, be followed by a hearing from the 19, which is, I'm sorry, a presentation. I have to keep remembering that these terms are legal terms of art. So, but we will follow that with a presentation, item number 19, which is for Everhome Durham FY 2022 update, and so that they will be ready. And we're now ready to hear item 12. And I think it's our research person is Ms. Michelle Woolfolk.
Yes, good afternoon, council members. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Michelle Woolfolk. I'm with the Public Works Department. I'm here to provide you with an update on the Upper Neuse River Basin Association activities, tell you where we are now, tell you where we're going to be going in this year. This agenda item also includes a resolution that you will be voting on in your May 2nd meeting. So I'm going to try to share my screen now. Can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try that again.
We see it now.
Great. Okay. Excellent. All right. So this is a relatively short presentation. I am going to be going backwards a little bit in time because this process has been going on for more than 10 years. So some of you may not be aware of the Upper Neuse River Basin Association, what's important, why they're doing what they're doing. Some of you will be aware of this, particularly those who have served on this board before. So the reason for the Falls Lake Nutrient Management Strategy, which is the whole point of the Upper Neuse River Basin Association right now, is that there's excessive algae in Falls Lake. There's also excessive turbidity in Falls Lake. Most of the time you can't see algae in the lake. It is always there, but you can't see it. However, when algae is excessive, you can sometimes see it. It might be a visible surface scum like you see in the upper left-hand corner. It might be a green tinge to the water like you can see in the bottom right-hand corner. It might also look to be like a green paint in the water, and the paint might even cling to the shorelines. All of those would be indications of excessive algae in the water. Most of the time, as I said, it's not readily apparent, even if the levels are really high. These two pictures that I'm showing you are of Falls Lake, and they're looking up into Ellerby Creek as the creek meets the lake. Rather than measure algae directly, the state tends to measure chlorophyll A in water. And chlorophyll A is just the pigment that is used for photosynthesis in all plants, including algae. The state has a not to exceed level of 40 micrograms per liter, which I've noted on the slide, for chlorophyll A in lakes. Falls Lake, particularly Upper Falls Lake, which the city of Durham drains to, exceeds that 40 micrograms per liter every summer. So this is a continuing issue. Just really briefly about the Upper Neuse River Basin Association. This is an association of local governments that have gathered together to work on problems in the Upper Neuse River Basin. Right now, the entire focus is on Falls Lake. All of the municipalities that are part of this association are listed there, as well as the counties that are a part of this association, and the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority, which does water and sewer for Granville County. The only jurisdiction that is in the watershed that is not a member is the city of Roxborough. The Falls Lake rules were adopted in 2010 and became effective in January 2011. As you can see here, the rules are pretty comprehensive. They are designed around the sources of nitrogen and phosphorus in the watershed. Nitrogen and phosphorus are the two elements that the state controls to try to bring algae levels into control as well. So all of our rules are targeting reductions of nitrogen and phosphorus in the sources. So the other thing to note is that the strategy, while it encompasses all of these different types of sources of nitrogen and phosphorus to the lake, the strategy was split into two stages because the hurdle for meeting all of the rules was fairly high. So here I'm showing the costs. So as part of the rulemaking process at the state level, the state has to do a fiscal note before the rules can be approved. And these are the costs that were provided in the fiscal note. So these are costs from 2010. Obviously, inflation acts on these costs, so they would be much higher in today's dollars. I've crossed through the stage 1 costs because the interim alternative implementation approach, the IAIA, replaced stage 1. So those costs are probably not, well, they're not going to be $605 million any longer. That IAIA changed how stage 1 would be complied with by setting a fixed dollar amount for each jurisdiction. I will point out that the IAIA is one of the reasons why the UNRBA is a good organization to be part of. That idea for that more cost-effective way to deal with stage 1 came from the Upper Neuse River Basin Association communities and was forwarded to the legislature by that organization. So that is one very clear example of the benefit of being part of the UNRBA. However, the stage 2 rules are still in place, and the fiscal note estimated that meeting stage 2 would be about $946 million. Again, in 2010 dollars, so it would be more now. They also estimated that a majority of this cost would be borne by the city of Durham. So the UNRBA hired a consultant quite a ways back now, 2013, to try to take those costs and make them a little bit more real, because those are big numbers and you can't really think in terms of $900 million, at least I can't. So this slide shows kind of the results from a public works standpoint. So this is more of a stormwater standpoint. There are additional costs and challenges associated with wastewater treatment, which if you would like to know those, I'm sure Water Management can give you a presentation about those as well. So looking at this slide by itself, the stage 2 costs of $1,400 per household per year, and that was estimated, I believe, over a 30-year time frame, would be needed to implement everything that all the jurisdictions would need to do. So that's not a Durham specific cost. That is a cost that is for all of the households in the watershed. So that would include Butner, Creedmoor, et cetera. It also estimated that as a group, we would have to implement 1,000 stormwater control measures per year. You've seen multiple presentations by now of the South Ellerby stormwater control measures, so you understand that getting even one in the ground can sometimes be quite challenging. So logistically, that is just not something that we can do, even if we had more staff. And then the last slide, or the last picture in the bottom right-hand corner, the most important part of that one is that we would have to retrofit nearly every acre of existing development in the watershed. Again, that is the biggest hurdle for the city of Durham as the most developed city in this watershed. So all of this additional information, which was generated by the UNRBA contractors, and this was generated after the adoption of the rules, further justified the need for a re-examination of the rules as they are now to something that's more workable and that gets us the result that we want. So that is the purpose of the UNRBA, and that is what they are working on now. So transitioning from the history of why the UNRBA exists, this is a timeline. I try to give you a timeline every time I talk and every time I submit an agenda item so that you'll know where we are. We are in the Calibrate Lake Models process. We have finished the Calibrate the Watershed Model process, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The UNRBA has been really grounded in doing a new reexamination, a new set of rules based on the best science that we can get. So the timeline that you see on this back to 2011, which was when the rules became effective, is the amount of time that it's taken the UNRBA to figure out what kind of information we needed to make those scientific decisions, scientifically based decisions, to get that information. Monitoring the lake is a time-consuming process, so we can't speed up that time. We have to monitor it, as time moves forward. And then doing the analysis also takes time. So we're probably about 40% through the analysis right now. Right now, because we're in that last or that first pink box, which says Calibrate Lake Models, that's really the last stop in the science evaluation. So once we finish that, we will be moving completely to policy decisions and using those tools that we've developed to try to help us make a new strategy and make the new decisions. So since 2005 and 2007 is the period that the existing rules are based on. So because we have to monitor, whatever rules that we make are derived from that period that we monitored. The state monitored from 2005 to 2007. If you were here in that time, you'll remember that both 2005 and 2007 were pretty nasty drought years. So the strategy that we have right now is based on a period that had bad drought conditions. We did also have a couple of tropical storms in that time. So not abnormal, but not normal either. But since then, nitrogen that has been applied to the watershed has gone down, as has phosphorus. The primary reasons for these decreases are stormwater control measures, small ones, as in the form of rain gardens and similar types of devices that have been installed in the watershed in the city of Durham, as well as watershed-wide loss of farmland. So as that farmland is being converted, nutrients that are being applied to the land is going down. Atmospheric deposition, so nitrogen that's coming out of the air and depositing on the land or on the lake, has also gone down. That's based on federal actions. And treated wastewater discharges of both nitrogen and phosphorus have gone down. That is for all of the wastewater treatment plants in the watershed, including the city of Durham. They have all not only met their first goal, their stage 1 goal, they have all exceeded their stage 1 goal. So here's some results from the watershed analysis. And these are based on the period that the UNRBA monitored. So these are based on 2015 to 2018, a 4-year period. The sources that you see listed here, forest, agriculture, urban, are actually land uses, because that is how the model gives us our sources. The only specific sources that we have here are the major wastewater treatment plants, which of course come through a pipe. So as you can see here in the top left graph, nitrogen is primarily from forest. That is the biggest contributor, with agriculture and urban falling behind those two. Major wastewater treatment plants, as I said before, have done a lot of work, have reduced their nutrient loads, their nitrogen and phosphorus loads. So their place in this graph has really dropped down a lot since the 2005 to 2007 period. The bottom right-hand corner for phosphorus in the streams after a rainfall, that is actually carrying nutrients with it, primarily phosphorus, and taking it down to the lake. And then urban and agriculture are about the same for phosphorus. So there's another way to look at this information. Past strategies for nutrient control have really considered forest loads as the best that you can get. So if we are treating nutrients that are coming from the city, coming from Brightleaf Square from that previous photo, our goal is always to get Brightleaf Square to behave like a forest, to hold as much nutrients as a forest can hold. So that is actually considered a land use or a source that is not controllable. So for getting forests to remove nutrients has in the past been considered something that we can't do. Getting unmanaged lands in general are considered things that we can't make a reduction from. So that leaves everything else to get a reduction from. So if forest is removed, for example, for phosphorus, that means that everything else that humans might have control over only affects 56% of the load of phosphorus that reaches the lake. And if we were superhumans and we could reduce every single one of those other categories completely down to 0, the best we could do is still 56%. So that is a big deal to us because the existing strategy has a 77% reduction of forests, so of phosphorus, sorry. So that eats right into that forest load, which we already have said we can't control. So this is the kind of information that we need to be getting from our tools to help us make better decisions. And those are preliminary results, or those are our early results. We are still cranking through all the numbers that we've gotten. So there will be lots more results that would be put out for the remainder of 2022 and early 2023. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be getting in the UNRBA. So here's the summary of the budget. Excuse me, this is a slide that you've seen before. I've broken out kind of where the budget is going. The things that increased over last year are the executive director and services category and the communication budget, which was bumped up another $20,000 because we have information now that we need to get out to the public. Here's a graph that shows the historical change to the budget since FY 2018. There actually hasn't been a huge increase to the budget, about $170,000 in total. So as staff from all the jurisdictions start working on a new strategy, there is some consideration already happening to guidelines for this new strategy. And what I've done here is I've put some examples of guidelines that we might be looking at, some of which actually that we're already looking at as we move forward, because the negotiation process is going to happen quickly and it's going to happen continuously over the next year as we talk with the other jurisdictions and with the state to try to figure out what a new rule package might look like. So if you have comments on this slide on other examples for guidelines, I would love to hear them. You can also let the manager's office know and they can forward that information down to me if you have comments on other guidelines. But these are just a starting point for where we think we might want to be as we're thinking about negotiating with the other jurisdictions. I will be talking to the Environmental Affairs Board about this later in the year as I bring them up to speed so that they can also weigh in on guidelines and maybe look at things in a little different way than I would look at them as a technical person, or that your team would look at them as technical people. And that is all I have for you today. The names here are the members of your Falls Lake team, Reggie Hicks, myself, Don O'Toole from the City Attorney's Office, and Sandy Wilbur and Joseph Smith from Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. I'm always amazed by the expertise and knowledge base of our city workers. And once again, you know, I'm learning a lot, but I do have a couple of questions which may be elementary. I always say that I'm in kindergarten a lot. In this role, and once again today I find myself sitting in kindergarten class and just need some basic terminology and some basic explanations to kind of catch me up. So just wanted to, you know, we have an overabundance of algae, I understand, in Falls Lake, and just wanted to ask you, and this is, like I said, an elementary question, why is that bad or good? And then there was another terminology that you used that I just want to make sure that people understand. And you talked about nutrients, because in the natural state, when you talk about nutrients, you think that that's a good thing, and I don't necessarily know that that's the terminology that we're using today, that it's good or bad. And then when you talk about, so, and you know, I know you, I'm just trying to give you the questions, and I see Councilman Williams, who's a newbie at this, shaking his head saying, yes, ask these questions, and I'm going to ask him to chime in as well. So then, you know, we have Falls Lake, and which covers a couple of counties. So if you could just give us a background on how Durham is connected to this. You know we sit in that, but just our jurisdiction in that arena, and how we are going to deal with the strategy in terms of the money, just so we'll have some kind of way of focusing what this means in the picture. I think you showed all of the counties and how Falls Lake kind of falls into that arena. If you could just give us some elementary take us to elementary school or kindergarten and bring us up. I think that might be helpful for us to kind of gel some of it. Did I miss anything, Councilman Williams, that you might want to add?
Nope, I appreciate you asking to bring that down from 30,000 feet.
Great. I think I've got all those down. So if I miss one, please just let me know. So why is algae bad was your first question. And algae by itself is not bad. We want algae. We need algae in the environment. It is the building block of all of our food, regardless of if you're a vegetarian or an omnivore. Algae only becomes bad if there's too much of it. And there's a couple of things that happen if there's too much of it. Algae, there are lots of different kinds of algae. There's thousands of different kinds of algae, and most of them are not harmful at all to anything that we would be in contact with. Some of them cause problems with taste and odor in drinking water. So when they become excessive and they are the right type, they will cause problems with drinking water, taste and odor. Some of them will lead to the formation of other bad chemicals, which I don't want to explain because I don't think I can explain it. I need water management to help with that. But other bad chemicals that could be formed in our drinking water supply. So we need for algae to stay low, or those specific kinds to stay low for those two reasons. In terms of ecological effects, too many algae, when they start to die, will rob the water of oxygen. And fish, one of our sources of food and one of our great sources of recreation and relaxation, will die when there's not enough oxygen in the water. So that is an ecological effect of having too much algae in the water. More recently, and when I say recent, I mean kind of 20 years time. I have gray hair. I don't know if you can see that. I've been here for a while. But more recently, in the last 20 or 30 years, we've started to see the algae make toxins in the water. So, we have to be a little bit more careful about letting your dog drink water when you're out walking next to a lake. We have to be a lot more careful about treating water to make sure that if there are toxins in the water, we can take it out. And those toxins are often formed by algae. So those are a handful of reasons why too much algae is bad, remembering that some algae is necessary and is good. We're just trying to keep it low, manageable, and not cause any of these different kinds of problems. Are there any follow-up questions to that?
No, ma'am. Thank you, teacher.
So your second question was about using the term nutrients. And you're right. It is something that it is a term that we use for things that we need to survive. And we also need nitrogen and phosphorus to survive as human beings. But the control of nitrogen and phosphorus, well, let me put this a different way. If you think about your garden, you are always putting nitrogen and phosphorus on your garden, or you are sometimes putting nitrogen and phosphorus on your garden so that you can get the harvest that you want. So that you can grow the plants that you want. You can grow those big juicy strawberries or those yummy tomatoes, whatever it is that you're growing. So those plants need nitrogen and phosphorus. In this area, they probably don't need very much phosphorus, but you probably would need to add some nitrogen to your soil. Algae are the same kind of plants. They grow really well when there's nitrogen and phosphorus available. They are plants. So they are nutrients for algae. And the way that we want to control how much algae we have is by giving them less food, essentially. So it is kind of an interesting term. It is the industry term for it, nutrients, but you're right. We all think of nutrients as things that we need, and it is actually things that algae needs too. And what we try to do is deprive algae of what it needs so we won't have so much algae. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. You're doing a great job. Thank you.
Okay. The third one that you said was how is Durham connected to this watershed? Other than just the map that shows the city sitting inside of the watershed. So every time it rains, we'll start there, water that runs off of the land goes into our creeks. I will use Ellerby Creek as the example because I'm sitting in City Hall and City Hall drains to Ellerby Creek. Water from here will drain to Ellerby Creek and then make its way down Ellerby Creek to go to Falls Lake. That is the case for all of the city that's in this watershed. Any rain that hits land in this watershed in the city of Durham is going to make its way to a creek or a river first, and then make its way down to Falls Lake. From there, it continues on until it gets to the ocean. So that is one way that water in Durham is connected to Falls Lake. The other way is that groundwater in the watershed, so if you have a basement that you have to regularly pump out, that is groundwater that's getting into your basement. And groundwater is also moving throughout the city. It naturally will come up in places along our creeks again. So when we do have really dry weather, the water that you see in the creeks is the groundwater. Everything that we do on the land affects what's in the groundwater as well. So that is another way that the city is connected to water that makes it to Falls Lake. Anything that comes out of the air that drops onto the city, doesn't matter where it started. If it drops onto the city lands, then that is also one way that nutrients are coming from the city of Durham and makes a connection to Falls Lake. I think I answered that question, but please let me know if I didn't.
You did. Thank you. You did. So, and I think those were all the questions that I had. So thank you so much for that. That kind of puts it in a context. Are you fine, Councilman Williams?
Yeah, that was really good. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for your patience. I know you all have some familiarity with this, but some of us are still playing kind of catch up. So we appreciate you today, your expertise, and most definitely for putting it in a context for us to understand. So thank you, Ms. Wilford. We appreciate you. Any questions for other than the ones that I had? All right, Councilwoman.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say that the staff that sits on the UNRBA is excellent. We were in excellent hands. I was the liaison there for several years, and just wanted to thank Michelle for her presentation today.
It was great. I enjoyed that. All right. All right, now we turn to item 19 for Everhome Durham FY 2022 update. And our research person is Mr. Reginald Johnson for this matter. Mr. Johnson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of City Council, greetings. I'm Reginald Johnson, Director of the Department of Community Development. Glad to be here. This is a presentation I want to share with you, an update on Forever Home, as well as some other work that the Community Development Department is doing. Normally, we would do part of this during the budget process, but this year we elected to have it part of a work session, so here we are, and we're glad to be here. I'm joined for this presentation by Karen Lotto, who is Assistant Director, as well as Terry Porter Holmes, and Assistant Director. And I'm also representing the many on the community development that works for you to create and preserve affordable housing and works to, as best we can, to end homelessness, and many are watching now. And so what I will do is share my screen for my presentation.
And we do see it. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right. All right, all right. So this is our presentation. What I'm going to do is talk about a little bit about the affordable housing challenge that we have in Durham in housing affordability. I'll also share some of the FY fiscal year 21-22 highlights. I'll talk about the FY 22-23 priorities, which there are some for us, as well as the challenges that we have, and then we'll stand for questions. So in terms of housing affordability, this is something that we all unfortunately have seen, become familiar with, and know all too well. According to Realtor.com is one example. The median listing price, home price in Durham is $365,000 in February of 2020. That's up 23% from the year before, which is significant. And then you can see the rental homes. The average rent has skyrocketed. I'll use the term skyrocketed dramatically in the past year, even for Durham in particular, but around the country, as you may have heard and well know. So we're not the only ones experiencing this increase, but it has been dramatic in terms of increases. One of the things that brings us to this conversation is the cost burden for renters in the households. And what we mean by cost burden, the rule of thumb, according to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, is that a household, whether ownership or renting, should not spend more than 30% of their household income on housing cost. Mortgage and insurance or rent and utilities. If you spend more than 30%, you're considered a moderately cost burden, the household is. And then if it's 50% or more, then one is considered to be severely cost burdened if you're spending more than 50% of your income on housing costs. What this chart reflects is the city of Durham rental households by income and housing cost burden. If you look at the one axis, the x-axis, you see the number of households. Then you also see across the other axis, the income AMI. And so at the 100% AMI, you can see that there's green. That means that persons are typically not cost burdened. But as you go down in income, moving to the left, you begin to see the lower the AMI, the lower the household income, the more persons that you have that are moderately cost burdened, which is in the blue. And then persons that are severely cost burdened, which is in the yellow orange. Depending upon your screen. And you can see when you're talking about 30% or less, those persons are often severely cost burdened, and we have several thousand of those in our community, households that are severely cost burdened. And when you compare that with the other information that is shared with you, it gets pretty significant and challenged. And we talk about that we just talked about renters, but now we'll talk about house cost burden owners, households in Durham. These are persons who own households. Similar story, not as pronounced as with renters, but you can see those that exceed 100% of their median income typically are not cost burdened. But as you lower the AMI, you begin to see, even for home ownership, those who are 30% below, for example, typically are significantly, severely cost burdened. And as a reminder, that's 50% or more of the household income in housing cost. This is a snapshot of availability of affordable units in market in Durham. And this, we took this snapshot actually in February. It was dated February the 1st. And this is a slide that reflects that on that day, there were 33,211 apartments for rent in Durham, according to apartments.com. And of the available apartments, 114 or 4% had a monthly rent of less than $900 per month. And you can see where those are and the number of those, and all of those were one bedroom units. I've used this slide before in a couple of different presentations. And finally, on this segment, why we even at the table and having this discussion, and why city assistance required, and why do we do the things that we do? Well, the best example, which is a little basic, shows the difference between the creation of market rate and affordable housing. Both of those bars are the same height, which means and reflects that the cost is generally the same. The major parts of creating these housing is the same between market. The things people talk about in terms of amenities, those are on the edges. Yeah, but the general foundations and structures are the same. But many of us, know persons who rent housing for extra income, and what they do is they charge enough in the rent, or if this is their business, they charge enough in the rent to be able to cover the operating expenses, any debt that they have, and have a return to the investor, a profit as we call it. That's a basic structure of our market. But when it comes to affordable housing, one realizes that the rental income is based on the person's income, not what the market says or what they can pay. And so therefore one is not getting the rental income to pay for all of the cost equivalent to what's on that bar. You're only getting enough rent income coming in to pay part of what's on the bar. And so there's the need for a subsidy. And that's where the city and other tools come in, is that because the bars are relatively equal, we have to subsidize to create a situation where persons can only pay part of their income and not be cost burdened, and so that they don't pay more than 30% of their income, because the income is limited into the structure. So that's the basic piece of why we're here and why we provide the opportunities that we do in terms of partnering with developers and other nonprofits to produce affordable housing. So the FY22 highlights, we've been able to implement Forever Home Durham program and provide COVID response, and do some other things as well to keep work going despite the challenges that we've had with the changing economy and the growing need of affordable housing in our city. One of the things that we did was just to refresh was create what's now known as Forever Home Durham. This is basically a 5-year multi-year investment totaling about $160 million, the cornerstone of which was a $95 million affordable housing bond. And there were several goals with this bond, as well as the $65 million in existing city and federal funds. We wanted to build 1,600 new affordable rental homes and preserve 800 affordable rental homes, provide 400 affordable home ownership opportunities to first-time home buyers, move 1,700 homeless persons into permanent housing, help 3,000 low-income renters and homeowners regain or improve their homes, and create at least $130 million in contracting opportunities for minority and women-owned business enterprises, MWBEs. This is a list of the projected plan that we have, that we shared when we designed the affordable housing program. Now we call that Forever Home Durham. And this is just to refresh to the various categories and the amount that we projected that we would, estimated that we would seek to spend in each area in order to reach those goals. So one of the things that's important is to, as I talk about this slide, to acknowledge the funding sources that went into that slide. And there were some funding sources, but there's not all of the funding sources that are available to community development. But the funding sources for Forever Home Durham include the Community Development Block Grant, which CDBG, from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We did that for 5 years worth of funding. That's from FY19 to FY 2024. Also, the Home Investment Partnership Funds from the Home Program, that was the same time period. The Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, and then Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, HOPWA, and then the Dedicated Housing Fund for 5 years, and then the Affordable Housing Bond. These are the sources that made up the plan for Forever Home Durham. Conversely, there are some funding sources that we have that are not within Forever Home Durham. One of those is the federal entitlement funds prior to FY19 when Forever Home Durham began. This includes CDBG, Home, ESG, and HOPWA, and we had programs and projects that use those as funding sources, as well as an associated program income with CDBG and Home, and that's where we've loaned money out previously, and that money comes back in to us as persons make payments. That's what program income. So prior to 2019, that's not included. Also not included is dedicated housing fund prior to 2019. And so we had projects that were included in scope, under contract, and using those funds since the creation of dedicated housing fund that's not included in Forever Home Durham, as well as bond program from any year, including during the period of Forever Home Durham, which is the income received from the repayment of past affordable housing bond referenda. We have 2, maybe 3 previous bond referenda that we've passed over the past 20, 25 years, where we've loaned money out and persons are making entities and people are making payments. And so we use that and program that income each year. And so that's not included in Forever Home Durham. So this chart reflects the progress to date since we started Forever Home Durham. We have here the goal that I just refreshed, and then what's in the pipeline means that that's where we have been discussions and negotiations with developers to create units. And then under contract means there's actually an executed contract. And then completed means that it's been completed and someone is there living in there. And then the total, and this is the remaining balance against the goal. So for rental units created, the total, we had a goal of 1,600. In the pipeline, 484. Under contract is 178. And then that's a total of 662, which leaves us a balance of 938. For rental units preserved, the total is goal is 800. And the pipeline is 42. Under contract is 219, which a total of 261. That leaves us with a balance of 539. Home ownership opportunities, 400. As you know, we just started the program last month, so we don't have anything to report there just yet there. And homeless persons in permanent housing, 1,700. So this changes from units to people. And completed, we've already serviced 838 persons, and we have 138 persons total, with the balance remaining of 862. And then low income houses stabilized, a goal of 3,000. We've completed 1,288 persons. And then we have a balance remaining of 1,712. This does not include these rental units that we're talking about, does not include the last RFP that we just issued as we're going through a process on that. So this doesn't include those units. So the financial overview, and this is partly reflected in the document, the big document that's an attachment. The Forever Home Durham's FY23 budget is approximately $38.5 million. And main increases include the drivers include increased budgets for multifamily projection and preservation, neighborhood stabilization, and homeless services. The big document that you have with the financial overview is composed of the actuals that we've spent to date on Forever Home, the actual funding, and then the projections of what we will project to spend over the next 2 years, 2.5 years. This chart reflects the Forever Home Durham rental housing development and preservation. I won't go down each of these, but you can see one across the top, the name of the project, the developer. So Durham Housing Authority and Laurel Street Residential is on the first one. That's rehab or new construction. This is new construction in a number of units. And then you see the status. which is under contract. The construction has begun. Elizabeth Street, which is also DHA, and Laurel Street is their developer. That's 72 units, new construction. That's in the pipeline using definitions. We still have conversations, was just in the meeting yesterday, though we have provided some money to them for that project. We're going to have to bring some more funding to the council to help them to be able to proceed with that project. Then you have others that they're working on in the pipeline: Commerce Street Family, Commerce Street Seniors, J.J. Henderson Tower Rehab, which is under contract. Well, the construction is going on now. Many of you know that. And then we have Ashton Place, which is the developers, DHIC and Self-Help. That's one of our 9%, the city's 9% tax credit projects. It's a new project, 51 units in the pipeline. Then we have Hardy Street, which was one of the projects selected from a previous RFP. 132 affordable units is in the pipeline. Crescent Street Apartments, used to be called Farrington Road. Laurel Street Residential is the developer, that's 82 units. Then we have some others, Bryan Place, the Lofts at Southside, which you approved a commitment letter, but that will be going into competition for this fall, well, this summer, and we hope to be successful in the summer, and that will be another 100 units. Then we've talked about Ross Road previously. We've come to the council, East Durham Rental Rehab with DCLT, 12 units in the pipeline, Harriet's Place and Fitzpowell. The ones that are in blue, we separated those out as I just reflected in the slide. Those are the projects that are part of the RFP that was just issued this year that is going through a protest process. But I wanted to list those, and those are highlighted in blue, as well as the number of units that those will produce. This slide reflects the additional activities that are not included in Forever Home Durham funding. Remember, I mentioned that the funding, part of the funding is in Forever Home Durham that we administer, and then there's funding that's not. And so these are the projects that are not in Forever Home Durham where we use other funding. One was Laurel Oaks, which is DHA, that's 30 units that's completed. We provide some additional funding to Maureen Road, which was a rehab project. That's construction has begun. I think it might be almost completed, Maureen Road. Willard Street, Phase 2, DHIC and Self-Help, and that's completed. Many of you attended the ribbon cutting. This is one of reflects the question that Council Mayor Pro Tem Middleton asked about Willard Street, and it's reflected here. And as I shared with you via an email, the funding for this Willard Street was part of FY18 funding that the council approved, so it's not technically in Forever Home Durham. The question he was asking was, should this be included? We wanted to include it because of the work that was ongoing. We can, but in what I needed to do for metrics purposes is make sure that matches the metrics with the money. And so that's the reason it's not in the count right now. Then one has the Grant Street project with DCLT, Southwest Central Durham 10 with DCLT, which use CDBG and home funds. And then you have a list of home ownership opportunities that are in the pipeline and under contract to produce additional home ownership. In terms of the NWBE contracting, the current addressable spending is basically just under $25 million. The NWBE addressable spending is 7.5, basically 7.5. And you see the breakdown thus far with Black and African American expenditures, MWBEs is Hispanic, Latinx, and women-owned businesses. In terms of the homeless services, just a reminder that Community Development Department, and part of our work, we serve as the lead agency for the Durham County Homelessness Continuum of Care, which includes staffing the Homeless Services Advisory Committee, preparing the annual funding applications for the state of North Carolina and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, preparing annual reports for HUD, including the point in time count, longitudinal systems analysis, housing inventory count, and the Hopwell Caper, which is basically a report card that we report to the public and to U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. We support Entry Point Durham, which is the front door to the homeless system. In FY 2021, 31% of the persons experiencing homelessness who contacted coordinated entry were diverted to homelessness without entering an emergency shelter. In partnership with Durham County, we fund the Unsheltered Coordinating Agency, or UCA, to provide street outreach and encampment response and support the emergency shelter operations in rapid rehousing. And several of our partners help with that, including Families Moving Forward, Urban Ministries, Housing for New Hope, and Project Access. In terms of neighborhood stabilization under Forever Home Durham, we expanded the amount of repair program that was launched with city and county funding. And Habitat for Humanity was awarded a 2-year contract to assist 80 low-income seniors that's over age 65 or disabled homeowners with repairs. Habitat also provides application intake for the city's substantial rehabilitation program and the home consortium rehab. And with the home consortium funds, that's how we're able to go into the county. And that's for part of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development funding. We're in the 3rd year of the city-funded eviction diversion program, which is completed, resulting in 660 tenants. 70% of the cases were closed, preserving tenancy. The long-time homeowner grant program completed for the FY19 tax year and in the process of the FY20 tax year, which includes the addition of Walltown neighborhood that the council added last year. And then the down payment assistance program was launched in March of this year. The program will provide up to $20,000 in down payment and closing cost assistance to homeowners with incomes less than 80% AMI. And Community Home Trust was selected as a program administrator. In terms of COVID response, we did not include COVID response as part of Forever Home Durham, but it is a significant part of the work and time that we have done over the last 2 years, but definitely over the past year. There's no question about that. As I've shared the amount of money that has come through for us to give to our community, and the rules and changing rules and regulations that are ongoing have presented one of the challenges. But one of the things we've been able to do with the rent relief program, over 2,700 applications were received in the space of 28 days. 450 funded to date, with an estimated 450 more to be funded before the funds are depleted. Application processing expected to be completed in May of 2022. The 2nd year of non-congregant shelter support, including both hotel and white flag shelters, that's part of the COVID response. And just to remind you, the white flag is when the temperatures get below 32. That's considered white flag. And all those who are unsheltered, there are extra places for persons to go in our community, and working to keep that stabilized even in the midst of COVID. Took quite a bit of effort on our team and with our partners. The 2nd year of the expanded emergency shelter and rapid rehousing funding using federal pandemic relief funds. And then the joint Community Development Office of Economic Workforce Development partnership to provide assistance to micro businesses impacted by the pandemic. And then the City of Durham Public Schools partnership to address COVID learning loss with 4 low-income schools in Durham is actually going well. So in the priorities for FY23, which are significant in terms of rental housing, we're going to continue to move rental projects forward, including projects in partnership with the Durham Housing Authority. That's complete construction of 2 projects on J.J. Henderson site, that's a rehab, and the new construction, and begin construction of 3 replacement housing projects for the DHA Liberty Street site. We're also going to begin contracting for projects awarded fundings during the FY22 RFP and the Lofts at Southside that's contingent upon the Lofts at Southside receiving low-income housing tax credit awards. I would mention that we did receive McCormick Barron Salazar did receive a perfect score for the site score for the Lofts at Southside Phase 3. And actually, we received the highest score for walkability projects. But that doesn't guarantee us or mean that we will be awarded, but I would rather have those in our hip pocket than not have those scores as we go into the competition. So that does bode well, but we'll see in August. In terms of homelessness, those priorities are to maintain support for the homeless system and providers, expand the system planning efforts, including the planning for home ARP funding, expand technical assistance opportunities for providers, and transition from pandemic operations to the new normal. So as we did transition to pandemic and have non-congregate shelters, and the pandemic is, we pray and hope coming to an end, we do need to look at what the new normal will be. Not sure what that will be, but we need to begin transitioning in our transition forever what that will be. Then in terms of neighborhood stabilization, we'll successfully manage the current programs, including the down payment assistance, the eviction diversion, the minor repair, substantial rehab, and maintain the expanded support for a small scale production, move the current projects forward, and issue a new RFP for neighborhood stabilization funding in these small scale projects. The challenges we have are significant. One is and I'm going to spend a little time here, a significant continued growth in construction costs. According to the National Association of Home Builders, the cost of building materials is up 20% in early 22 from the year before. Then we also having a challenge with interest rate volatility. The rising interest rates for projects that have not closed, and a lot of the projects that you saw in the pipeline that I had listed have not closed yet. And so that's significant because, even 30 days, interest rates do increase in pronounced ways. And that can produce additional gaps, which means there's additional subsidy needed, going back to the chart that I had, the third chart in this presentation. Of course, the workload capacity with the community development team, developers, and providers. So it's just not the workload for community development, but our pipeline and the people can do the pipeline have limitations as well. One of the things is the termination of the HUD-led remediation program. This is a challenge. We took on this program when another department had applied for it, and we were appointed to administer the program, but we needed to change the program to be within the guidelines for what was accepted as the proposal and award the funding is presented a challenge. And we're going to basically run out of time before we're able to comply with all of the elements of the program. And then 6, recapture of the North Carolina Neighborhood Stabilization Program NSP funds to the tune of about $675,000. This funding was NSP stimulus money that was awarded under the Obama administration that we use for Southside revitalization project. And this is one of the funding sources that we used. And as it turns out, they weren't clear on the rules, we weren't clear on the rules, and we're ending up having some funding recaptured all the time. We've been working with them, but in the end of the day, we are going to have some funding that's recaptured. It's not part of Forever Home Durham, but this is one of the challenges that we have, and we are going to be able to accomplish that. One of the things that I will go back to in terms of these challenges, in terms of the construction costs, this is, I'm going to talk about this later in the summary, but this is going to be a major challenge for us, the number 1 and number 2, because we have several projects that have not closed, that are under tremendous pressure. And for example, just in the case of lumber, 100 foot lumber cost about $350 from 27 to 2022 was $350. In the past year, it's been the same amount. It's been about $1,400, which in March was about $1,300. And so those are just reflective of the cost increases that are real. And then in terms of interest rate volatility, some of our projects are facing what I would call a double whammy because, as everyone knows, the interest rates are volatile and these projects have not closed. And the longer they go without closing, the gap can become increased because the interest rate is rising. And so that's another piece that I would share in terms of our challenges. Also, and the nature of development projects, and this is particularly subject to the negotiations for the housing authority, but the changing deal structures, the layered financing with multiple regulations for different financing sources, and the changing project timelines can result in delays, which can be impacted by the interest rate volatility. And there's the truth to the old adage, time is money. And then subject to the COVID impacts still, which is general contractor availability, subcontractor availability, supply chain disruptions, which is one of the things that's is impacting the cost of a lot of the goods, and then just overall project schedule changes. So in summary, I would say that we are making progress. I will also share that there's not enough progress to meet the need, which is being exacerbated by the current economy and the housing market. Challenges are present, particularly with those projects that's not closed that I've just talked about. We must assess the point at which we cannot provide sufficient additional funding, placing projects in jeopardy of not proceeding. But that's something that we do have to evaluate. Our goal and our recommendation is that we do what it takes to keep these projects going, because at the end, based upon where we started with this presentation, our community is definitely in need of the units. We need the units, these units that will be subsidized for 30 years, at least, to produce the affordable housing. We've just got to have them. And so our recommendation is that we do what it takes to be able to produce those units and keep these projects going. So that's Mayor, that's a lot that I've shared with you, a lot of detailed information. But this is the report from your Community Development Department on what we've done and accomplished for FY22 and what the prospects are for FY23. I stand for any questions.
Wow, thank you, Mr. Johnson. That is a lot of information. I saw the sort of the bulk of it at the crime cabinet, so I did have the opportunity to get most of my questions out. I'll have a couple of, but I'm gonna open it up for questions from my colleagues who have not had the benefit of seeing this first. So I know that Councilwoman Deidre Freeman was at that meeting as well, so I'll start first with Councilman Williams. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think the first was regarding the dialogue with Mayor Pro Tem Middleton and you, Director Johnson. I'm still trying to get a little clarity on that, because when I look at the slides, I see Willard Street. Are we saying that it is included or is not included? What
right
was the
now,
interpretation of the fiscal year?
Okay. So the question that is answered for right now based upon the financials. This is the financial accountability. Financial accountability is not included. And it's not included because the funding was not part of the 159 million.
Okay, so Forever Durham is the 160 and...
Yes, it's 160,
okay,
it's
gotcha.
the absolute 160.
Okay.
And so for measurement, for you to see and the public to see, we need to show what is projected for the 159 to obtain.
So conceptually it's included, but financially it's not.
That's correct. We can include it in the count.
Okay.
But for you to be able to evaluate it, and for it to study value, we need to be able to compare apples to apples.
Okay, good. I think from personal experience and what we're experiencing here, the challenges that you're facing we're facing is what stands out the most to me. So I guess my main concern is, how are our programs measuring up with this market being the way that it is? Because I'm not sure $20,000 in a down payment is going to do much in this in this market. So what type of adjustments are we forecasting?
So one of the things that we're looking at with the program, if you remember, it just opened. We received 1,000 applications already. We're in the process of evaluating those applications. We wanted to give it some time to see, because one of the pieces is not just the amount of money. The question is whether the persons can find a product house that they can purchase based on what we just shared. And so we want to spend some time with that so we can come back and evaluate after a period of time. But we may have to make some adjustments. We're open to that. But of course, if you increase the amount of money, that means less people served. And you have to evaluate those types of things and what's the balance.
Gotcha. Do we know the rate or volume in which we're building in Durham units for purchase rather than units for rent?
So I don't have that information. I would have to possibly talk with the planning department to get that type of information. I don't have that information with me, part of my purview.
Okay.
So you're asking what's the number of houses that are being built? And I can't tell you. I just don't know.
Councilmember Williams, are you talking about in our Forever Home program or our affordable program, or you're talking about in Durham in general? Because I picked up, I'm not really sure which question you were asking.
Got you. So, well, I don't know, we probably have the general question, because that's the market in general, but in our program that we're facilitating.
So I think that is something that Reginald and his team can provide as follow-up.
Yes.
Okay, and the tea leaf with that is, the reason why I'm asking is because I know we're building a lot. We're building a lot in Durham, but we're building, I don't know if the building that's happening in Durham is diversified enough for the demand. And that is what's scaring me, because the market is all over the place right now. And we talk about affordability enough, but I do understand we have to build at every level. So I'm just asking those questions or seeking that information to sort of, determine the efficiency or the impact of the programs that we do have in our within what we can control and what we can facilitate. So thank you.
Councilwoman Caballero.
Thank you. Reginald, thank you for the presentation. It is sobering. I know we're doing some really excellent work, and I know that you all have, the housing industry in general just has some really intense volatility now. Do you have a sense of, as interest rates continue to increase, I know that affects us negatively, but is it also then possible that it slows down the housing market because not as many folks are going to be entering into the housing market with those interest rates?
So I would say for us here in Durham, to be honest, I would say no. Because remember, we have on the market rate side, now, our work spends on time on the affordable side. But on the market rate side is kind of simple, going back to the chart that I just shared with you about the producing the market. What they just do is raise the rents and raise the prices. And I don't want to say unfortunately, but we have new industry coming in, new people coming in, and they're paid whatever the market says. So on the market rate side, that's a challenge before us, and it has an impact. So I don't know that it slows people down from coming, to be quite frank about it. Now, what it does have is a dramatic impact on the affordable side, because there's no production of units that, as council member just mentioned, there's a limited number of functions, units that are produced on affordable. There's a need of more subsidy. Remember the subsidy slide that I just talked about? That's a limitation on the funding and pressure on the funding that we have, because you can't produce the affordable housing without the subsidy to make up the gap. So I don't know if that helps you with your answer, but that's my prognosis.
Thank you. And then are you all keeping up with, there is rumbling that we are going to see some, and maybe not here, but in other places in the country, slowing down of the housing industry in general because the prices are just getting so high. Durham is not the only community facing this issue. So are you all keeping up with those indicators at all?
Yes, we are keeping up with those indicators. If you think about the affordable housing market, you know, a lot of times we make progress when the economy is down because funding is cheaper. I mean, things are cheaper. But we know we'll see what works, but just in the cyclical nature of it, some of our best times are in the downtimes for the production of affordable housing because others aren't working and they need work.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Go ahead, Councilman Williams.
Director Johnson, I don't want to use this as a scare tactic to the public, but I know not saying it doesn't change the reality. But if as we're projecting about what's about to happen with all of these companies that are coming to the Triangle, I in regards of, you know, I guess I'm trying to, I want to see when the market is going to pop because we really kind of need that to happen. But at the same time, I'm wondering what we need to do policy-wise because I know financially and volume-wise, we can't keep up and we can't really compete. But when Apple, you know, when their shovel touches the ground and they start to bring 14,000 jobs here, when you know, Nike comes and Google comes and Grail and Grain and all of these corporate companies, when we're looking at close to 20 to 30,000 jobs, 6 figures injected within 5 years of the Triangle, that's a little different than what's happening across the nation. And I'm a little scared. So I think, you know, because we can't keep up financially and can't keep up, you know, volume-wise with building enough, I think the only other approach is how creative can we get policy-wise? So I don't know if that's this department or where we go and look to explore those things, but I'd like to entertain that.
I think
I'm sorry.
as a second part of that, I think one of the things that the general public struggles with in this arena is we're watching apartments and housing being built, you know, everywhere, especially in the downtown area, and then you had a stat that showed 3,000 and some odd vacant units. Of that, only 100 and some odd were one bedroom at $900. And most people will, you know, question, well, where does the city, what role does the city play in this, in the control or not control of the building? Because, you know, of the building of it, because there's definitely an imbalance. And most people will, you know, when I'm out, it's like, well, how do they get to come in and build all of these houses? And we know that they're building, and you all keep approving more of that, knowing that there's this imbalance. So could you kind of explain, you know, how that happens? And what we can do about it as a city, as a city board, a policy-making board, and then within the planning department itself. And that may not be something that you can answer totally, but I know that's what I'm getting a lot, is how is this happening, knowing that we have this imbalance?
Right. So, Mayor, you asked an excellent question. I do get the same question as well. And in fact, many persons who know what type of work I'm involved in ask me, why am I creating all this apartments downtown? And so then I have to share with them, as part of your answer, is that in terms of our zoning, you know, and this is not in my area, but it is permissible and it does, people can do that. And economy speaks to when there's demand, somebody can go and get a loan and produce a building. You know, in terms of what we can do is look for more innovative ways to produce more affordable housing. I would say that even with innovation, it does require money because the fundamental principle, the fundamental is you're not gonna have enough income to make it work to build the building. So how do you get around that? And it's gonna require some money. at the end of the day to be able to do that. But in terms of the direct answer, that's the purview of the government to the local government to grant permission. But one of the things that we're challenged with and a government has to be careful about is if one limits it, it makes the problem, the challenge worse, not better, because you're limiting the supply. And that's can force the prices even further than what we have now. So it is a balance. We're going to look and commit to trying to look at ways to be more innovative in getting more affordable housing and working with the planning department in terms of tiny houses. But there's an economic issue to tiny houses and those types of things, which may be able to lower the costs. But banks don't necessarily finance those. And so one of the things we can look at is how we can get the market to be able to come into that arena. So it is complicated, but I think, we can try to find some other ways to meet the challenge. But the direct answer to your question there, the free market has a role to play and a major role to play in all of what we see here.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Councilwoman Freeman, you have some questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and because I did have the opportunity to see this presentation, I have about 8 more questions, but I won't ask them just this second. What I will say, though, is I think it's important that we have this dialogue and that we go a whole lot deeper, because when I brought it up the first time before the bond passed, it wasn't heard. You cannot just talk about affordable housing. It is a limitation because it's only housing. There has to be a conversation around income. If we're not going to talk about how we increase folks' income, it's not going to matter. Our metropolitan area, average area of income is far and above what folks make at minimum wage, 40 hours a week. And so we know the pain that folks are feeling. What I would like to push in on, and the questions that I did ask Director Johnson at the meeting were around making sure that we're not just talking about equity. We actually have to implement. And so that means making sure that that $130 million circulates not just through to Black and brown businesses, but actually local Black and brown businesses. And that means building a pipeline. So as we talk about transportation and the commuter rail, it's the same conversation. There's architects that are involved. There are engineers that are involved. There are designers that are involved. There are artists that are involved. Who are they? How are they playing a role in this? As we see the projects come forward, and it's disheartening. I'm not even going to say, I understand how the process works. RFPs are RFPs. The way it's set is how it's set. But we have to be really creative about how we engage our community and being involved on the front and the back end. Not only do they want to live in it, they want to build it. So on that's on one side. On the other side, there are folks who are not going to be able to produce income. They are retired. They are folks with disabilities that do not allow them to work. And if we are going to develop a system that supports them, acknowledging how this hardship is being created based on the market, then we've got to be real serious about what public housing means and how we use it, and who's in the units, and how long they stay in the units, and what rates they pay. So these are really like, we have a lot of land. And in that meeting, I mentioned that if we're not talking city, county, and school land that is owned throughout this whole county, we're going to miss the opportunity. We don't have a lot of time, but we have the funds, we have the council, we have the leadership to get it done, but we're not talking about it yet. And so I appreciate our mayor and Chair Howerton bringing this forward at the crime cabinet. I look forward to the name of the crime cabinet changing to something more positive. And I look forward to actually having this deep dive discussion about what we need to do this work. So I'll leave it at that. And I will make sure that I let Reginald Johnson know that I need to have a, session, because I need these questions answered. And I'll bring it back so it doesn't take
Thank you, Councilwoman Freeman, and I agree with you totally. The reason that it came to the Durham Crime Cabinet, and we are going to consider a name change, I think we do need something more positive, something on the resiliency level, and so we're inviting that discussion. But we're going to stay in that housing vein in the Crime Cabinet part of in that commission, because one of the quotes that I heard recently is, and that I agree with, is that the social determinants of health, which would include housing, are the same as the social determinants for crime, right? It's one and the same. So we all know this, it is intricately linked with, if you do not have a stable place to live, everything goes off the rail at that. And what what we can't keep doing is having these, what I call the gnashing of teeth and the wringing of hands moments where we're paralyzed and we cannot move forward. Our reality is that we are a growing city. People are attracted and they're coming. We already know that. But at the same time, we have to be very intentional about not leaving anyone behind. So as we talk about it as a council, one of the things that I think that in my experience in this arena in this short time is that there are lots of groups out there who are talking about different parts of it, but it's disjointed. So you kind of get frustrated in trying to figure out how you encompass that into one conversation so that we can go deeper and have a conversation for us to have, so that we can go deeper as a group in it, and then figuring out how we can direct our community with one kind of goal in mind in this arena. So I invite you all to help think about, does that look like a task force? Does that look like a series of town halls or something? But some way we have to be able to, at least from my vantage point, is to get ourselves where our knowledge base about who's doing what out in that land, and then to look further than what's going on in Durham, because certainly we're not the only one that's grappling with this. So I'm always one that looks forward to talking with other people in other cities who have dealt with the issue or who are dealing with the issue, so we can get ideas and be able to kind of move the conversation forward. The other thing, so I just put that out there, and I know you coming, but for Mr. Johnson in particular, on the home ownership piece, that program that has just opened, one of the things that I've heard from some folks is that, that people want to own a home, but they get really afraid about that process. Are there community service organizations that, or people who can actually, you almost need a mentor or a hand holder to help you navigate? Some of our folk who are looking to be a homeowner, some of them may not even have the benefit of computer skills. So are there organizations or folk out there that we can point people to say, okay, we can kind of help you navigate, what that world looks like, and be able to kind of walk you through?
So I would say, Mayor, yes, there are for home buyer classes. And actually, as one goes through our program, you do have to have a home buyer class. One, the PERS just do know that our our program can be a second mortgage program or down payment assistance, but one still has to get a first mortgage from a traditional lender. Okay. And so what you're asking is, how do you get to that first step? And there are home buyer classes in our community that are being provided, and we do recommend those.
Okay, are there ones like they would go to one at Durham Tech? Are there specific organizations that you could speak to today that people out there, those 1,000 people who have applied, can go ahead and start, looking for the first step? It sounds like is you need to get in a home buyers class. So are there specific organizations that they can go and get those classes from that you can speak to today?
So Mayor, I don't have them right now, the current list. I'm gonna ask Ms. Lotto if she does. If not, we have to provide it on follow-up.
Okay, that will be helpful to at least help people get started.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Karen Lotto, Community Development Department. Just to follow up, the first step in our program is actually to get pre-qualification. So this means that the household needs to both go through the income determination process through our vendor, Community Home Trust, as well as then to go to one of our approved lenders and get a letter indicating that they are pre-qualified for a mortgage. Once they have that, then our vendor offers home ownership preparation classes and financial counseling. That is one of the services that the city has engaged them for. And there are also other vendors in the community who provide that. I would need to follow up with you to provide that list, but it is built into our program. That financial counseling is built into our program. So that would be their second step after they get pre-qualified.
Okay.
And then their third step is actually, we hope, them finding a unit, and then we go through the loan closing process for our second mortgage.
Thank you, Ms. Lotto. And is that spelled out on in the program? It actually will walk them through like baby steps, like the kindergarten steps, like you need to be pre-qualified and this is what you do to do
Correct.
that. And it refers to them. So look on the website, everybody out there, and you'll find the directions. And if not, you see we have folk who can help you to navigate it. Thank you for that. And I think that Councilman Williams had some additional thoughts.
Just a comment, I appreciate Councilmember Freeman for saying what I'm always preaching. Everyone who applied for the City Council vacancy, everyone on this council, including myself, and everyone I talk to in the community, including an entire coalition, we all talk about affordable housing, but we do have to build at every level. But we are talking about building units or creating units when there are over 26,000 job vacancies in this city. Over 26,000 job vacancies. And I know this isn't popular to say, but we have to also put some conversation and focus on getting folks access to those jobs as well. We can't just try to build. We'll never build enough, ever. So I hear a lot of advocating for things that have gotten folks where they are. And when we keep doing that, we're advocating for them to stay where they are, although we may mean well. So we have to it has to be a both and. We got to build, more units, but do know that when we're building for ownership, we're building and we're generating more revenue for the city to be able to take care of the social issues that are extremely pertinent. But we also have to build units to rent as well, so we can make sure that we not only take care of the transient population, but also the population where we need to meet that affordability. But part of creating affordable housing is creating access to opportunity to allow folks to be able to be economically sustainable and independent. So I just wanted to continue that and put it out there. We have over 26,000 job vacancies in this city, over 400 in the city itself, government. And we need to also talk about how we're going to activate those. So, thank you.
And I invite us to begin the conversation now, because that when you move people into livable wages and wages where they are thriving rather than surviving or not surviving, that changes the whole conversation. So how can we as the policy-making board and the leaders begin to, kind of look at, in my mind, that's looking at it holistically. So how do we begin to do that in a real way and be intentional about that process?
Madam Mayor, if I might, I would say that I think your idea around the town halls is a great first step that might lead to a task force or committees or what have you. But I think that just kind of going through the process of hearing from property owners and renters, I mean, as I feel like the whole Tenants Bill of Rights stalls, it's hard to have the discussion not knowing what the rents will be or if folks will even be able to afford to live in this city. And so we've got to have an all-encompassing conversation with everybody involved in housing, and that has to include advocates for veterans, advocates for people with disabilities, advocates for seniors, advocates for folks with sickle cell. Like, we've got to make it a very all-inclusive conversation that makes sure that we're not missing any set population within our community. I mean, even acknowledging how are our folks in the refugee community managing. I mean, this is impossible. So I think that the town hall would be helpful to at least like kind of gather some feedback from residents in our community. And then we can move forward with some of the more, folks who do this work conversations, and then go from there.
Councilwoman Caballero, I'm coming your way for some feedback, some thought.
I don't have, I think just to be candid, I think we have a lot of the solutions. I think we're prevented from implementing those solutions because of preemption in state law. I think that we can all come up with many things. Many communities have inclusionary zoning, they have real estate impact fees, they have all kinds of tools that help their local government maybe not solve the problem, but at least have be able to have a more aggressive approach. And so, I'm going to say it, folks want a different outcome. It's not our delegation that's causing the problems. You want to volunteer some time. It's not just in Durham. Go knock some doors off for candidates around who will help us with the different political landscape. That's just the reality. I think we can all come up with lots of solutions. I think many communities across this country have come up with some really innovative things, but if we're not allowed to do it by statute, we're going to keep hitting this wall. So I guess for me, folks want to know what they can do this primary season. Your Durham delegation is very much in line with the values of this council. I would not say that that is an accurate reflection across the state.
And to that point, Madam Mayor, I would say that it might not be that we have to work through, because I feel like that's a process that works really slowly. It may need to be direct, and maybe it's a lawsuit.
I do want to say something, because there is some hope that I am seeing, and I know these are conversations that are happening in JCCPC, and I've been, banging this drum for a long time. We know we're not going to be able to build all of the affordable units on government money, but we can create processes, especially with our local builders who we know have a lot of interest in, and we're seeing it. We're starting to see different zoning cases where we're getting a lot of interest from local smaller developers, and how can we work together so that we can do some of this market rate housing. I know that there's limitations because, the last zoning case we saw was really, really large. They were able to include some of those affordable units because it was so large. But I think there is opportunity there to continue that work, to continue working with our development community here around some of these things so that we can create a pipeline. If you're willing to put affordable units on your house, do we move you through the process faster? Through your development project, do we move you through this process faster? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to have a good conversation and outcome.
Councilwoman Johnson, I'm coming your way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate the presentation. It's good to see the progress that we're making, and I of course share everyone's concerns about all of the issues that we're seeing in the market, the 400 home ownership opportunities with, median new home prices over $400,000. I feel like there are a lot of the goals that we had when we devised this program have been made increasingly challenging by the economic realities that we've faced over the last few years. And a lot of it feels, the scope of the problem, we all accept the scope of the problem is beyond what we can do as a government. And honestly, I think the scope of the problem is beyond what we can do as a community. This is an issue, like this housing crisis is national. In some sense, and it's global. Like we are one community among many who is really struggling with these issues. And while we can certainly do good work and make a difference, a real solution to this problem is going to have to come from higher levels of government, either in the ability to regulate the housing market more effectively in order to ensure that lower income people are being served and that the market isn't only serving those who can most afford to pay, which is what markets tend to do on their own, or with the funding to provide massive amounts of publicly subsidized housing so that people who are currently unable to access housing on the market are able to access that publicly subsidized housing. And I'm really proud of our city. I think we are doing our part. We are doing what we can within the bounds of what we're allowed. And we passed the biggest housing bond in the state's history ever. Like, it is, we are making a concerted effort to make a difference in this arena, and it's nowhere near enough. And I think that and the conversation is just so much bigger than us, and it just feels like we're always working on the margins, Like we can, and when $160 million feels like you're working on the margins, like this problem is something that our federal government is going to have to address in the very near future, or our entire country is headed for an even deeper and longer lasting crisis. And so it's kind of like from the point of view of the city of Durham, I feel really good about what we're doing. I feel like we are making a difference and we are doing what we can. But we really, really need a higher level of intervention. And I think, regulations at the state and federal level and investment at the state and federal level is what's really going to determine how and when we get out of this. And the same with wages, honestly. Like, the way you get people to pay workers more isn't asking nicely, it's by raising the wage floor. And so, all of the efforts at the state and federal level to raise the minimum wage are really critical. And we've already gone beyond, we've been fighting for $15 minimum wage now for more than 10 years. Like, now that's outdated. You need $25 an hour to afford housing in Durham. So again, it feels like the economic pressures that we are under are so substantial that the interventions that we can make are just never going to really get to the crux of the problem and are never really going to present a holistic solution. We need more power and we need more money. And I think, and we do advocate with our delegation and with our federal delegation for both of those things. And we need to continue doing that, and other cities need to continue doing that, because this is a national problem, and it's going to need a national solution for us to really move to where we need to be. Housing is a human right, and it should be guaranteed. That should be just the basis of policy. And it's really, it's really disappointing that we can't, that in the richest country in the world, we can't provide people with something so basic as a place to live.
The one thing I like about, and I'm coming back to you, Councilman Williams, but I just got to get this part out. When I think about the Racial Equity Task Force, that is true, this type of problem has been a problem going on for 400 years, but this city was innovative enough to sit down and convene a task force and put it in writing and articulate a vision. In my mind, we need to do the same thing with this arena. Taking note that it is a national issue, but once you start to document things, and I agree with what you both are saying, But until you document it and put it in writing for people to see it and know it, they can discount it. You can't discount. The city of Durham could no longer discount racial equity or inequity because it was there. It was articulated. And we had goals and plans, and we still do, that we abide by today. In my mind, this is going to have to be that kind of thing, because it may come to some of these issues that you both have suggested, Councilwoman Freeman, and that all three of you have suggested, that, but we need to articulate it. These are the things that we can control. These are the things that are going to have to take a national movement. These are the things that we're doing. So that's I think, at least, and we are pioneering. When we did that racial equity task force, nobody in the country was doing that. Nobody. We were getting calls from Alaska and different places where they know that was pioneering work. And so that's the kind of innovation that I think we need to do, because housing is a basic right. And we have enough experts in this area where we can articulate it in a living document to at least provide a pathway. Councilman Williams, those are just my initial thoughts.
Yeah, really short comment here. I don't want us to get too deep into, committee work. Well, I guess this is a work session. Never mind. I think this will probably be through the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. But as an employer, I don't have other than Indeed.com, I don't really have an actual place to post or a concentrated place to post the positions I'm hiring for. And I think one thing we can do, we could, as a city, one idea may be sponsoring just a centralized virtual location for job availability. And that is from our chains all the way to our local businesses, but preferably on our local businesses, because there's a higher percentage of the dollar that stays local when you shop local. So it's in our best interest to really strengthen our local economy for the overall community. But yeah, I know that the Durham Small Business Coalition, I'm one of the founders of that. It's a group of just employers across the city. We have over 200 of us in that group. Whenever one of us are hiring, we post in that group, hey, if you know somebody looking for this or that, and it's a myriad of businesses, let me know. And then we have the Durham Downtown Food and Beverage managers and owners, restaurant owners basically. Hey, anybody have an excess dish? Anyone has someone that's looking for a dishwasher position or a cook position or general manager position? And in regards to wages, in Durham, the small businesses are paying really good wages. As a matter of fact, if we pay much more, we're going to be going out of business. So we have to be really careful about having a wage-only conversation and actually think about how do we raise the tide? How do we rise the tide? So that we're not suffocating our local businesses to the point that we're running them out of business, but we also have to make sure that we're, paying folks decent. So there's a lot of creativity that we can take on in the private sector if we could have a really good partner, and that's part of the reason why I'm sitting in the seat today, to be able to have those type conversations and have both perspectives with it. But yeah, I would love, Director Pettigrew, if you're hearing me, an actual space where folks who are employers in this area can say, hey, here's the information on the job, or at least create a template. Here's the information. I'm looking for this. And then we have these 26,000 job vacancies in Durham. May not be that many, but folks can say, all right, I can go to the city of Durham and I can apply for a job all across the city, whether it's in the city government or in the private sector. But that's in our best interest. Thank you.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate Councilmember Williams' suggestion. I think it's a good idea to have a centralized location, similar to our YouthWorks conversation. I think those businesses that partake in that should also be in partners around that as well. I just wanted to raise the point, just acknowledging we are still in our budget season, and I think it's probably just in thinking through that we're talking about community development, and community development, I feel like is very good or filled with staff that's specifically focused on grants and federal funding and the bond. And I don't know that there's a planner in that department, but you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong. Someone who is actually kind of leading out into how we're having this conversation around an open space planner, someone who's in our, just looking at the landscape and trying to figure out how across the board, all of the different initiatives, all the different, partners, all the different ways in which funding is coming through. How does community development directly connect to that? And the same thing in our workforce and economic development partner. Who is doing that? How is that happening? Is there a regular meeting that folks can attend to pour into that conversation? I know as an organizer in the faith-based community, we have regular meetings that people can just show up at and offer an update. And that often is a good way to connect multiple resources to one problem. Or, someone could raise the issue. Where is that happening inside of our city government? How is that happening inside of our city government? And I'm not saying that it's all staff, like staff talking to one another. It's really staff and community in a similar space around what our community development future looks like. So if we need to study that, I understand that's the way that, the city operates. You need to study everything. We need to hire a consultant and, set up an RFP so that someone comes in and tells us exactly how that works. I would think that this would be the time to have that conversation before we pass a budget. And that's all. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to challenge us as the council by our next work session is to come up with your list of asks in terms of, I guess, what the questions are that we want answered. Is it, and where, from what venture, from what branch? For instance, what would you want to happen from the federal government level? Where is that bug? What do you want to happen within city government? What do you want to happen from state government? What do we want to see from, just if you had a perfect world, to kind of give us some points where we can begin to dig deep and to figure out whether that looks like a task force, whether it looks like town halls where we're getting our answers, and where do we see the roadblocks? Just a brainstorming session for us so that we can begin to kind of drill down and understand who and what we're going to task with whatever it is we're looking for. Sort of your visionary kind of approach. So just spend some time in that space so that next time we have a work session, we can just brainstorm about what it is we want to kind of formulate to help take us from where we are now to where we want to go, and what are the roadblocks that we see that we may need to help get our community to help us to understand. I don't know that people know nationally or locally what inclusionary, we know there are a lot of people that do know, but they don't understand how that impacts what we're able to do, right? So if we can begin to brainstorm just within our own knowledge base, I think then that will provide us with getting a framework to who we're gonna ask to sit at the table to help us navigate, and just come up with your list of asks. Councilman Williams, you came up with some great points about a centralized location, whatever else you can think of in that vein. We all know those things that we would like to see, and let's just plan to have some dialogue where we just kind of, we actually brainstorm so that we can come up with a framework for moving us forward, recognizing that we're going to have some limitations, but at least we will lay out where they are, and the folk in Durham will know what they are and why we have to move a specific way or not move in a specific way. So does that make sense for everybody? Okay, so that's our homework assignment. So we're just gonna brainstorm it, just talk about it, talk through it, try to, and I know Ms. Wallace is real good at kind of organizing. So if you could help us be able to organize how that will play out, you know, whether it's somebody being a scribe or just to give us some place to start from. Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, Professor, Madam Mayor. I appreciate it's probably been less than 30 minutes that we've been having this discussion, and it feels a whole lot lighter in acknowledging that we have to figure out a way forward. I think the frustration levels of not just us as a council, but people in the community around what affordable housing looks like and how inaccessible it is overwhelming. And I want to appreciate you making this time today for us to have the discussion and to think of ways to move forward. Thank you.
I think that's part of our charge, and we all are good at that. We've had some pioneering efforts, but, you know, we have to start somewhere. And so just kind of getting it out of our heads and acknowledging our frustrations and where we see the roadblocks, and we doing that as a group, will give us a framework to move forward. And that's what we've been elected to do. We're not miracle workers, but we are charged with thinking and being visionary about what we want this city to be. And I think that, you know, we need to take the time to do that, to just get it out of our own heads and begin to put it in a framework where we'll know where we're going. So there we have it. I think that's good stuff today. That's what you call democracy at work. I appreciate you all. So we're gonna move now to our next sort of business, which I'm gonna turn it back over to Madam Clerk for an update on our boards and commission.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had one board and committee that was up for nomination, and it is the Human Relations Commission. The appointment for the Human Relations Commission category of African American person, we did not have consensus on that. There were 3 votes for Ebony Sneed, 2 votes for Darcel Dillard, and 1 vote for Angela C. Jimerson. And I was wondering if somebody would like to switch their vote.
Turn your mic on, Councilwoman Freeman.
If you could tell me if I'm one that could switch, I would
You
switch
are
to
one that
Ebony
could switch.
Sneed. That's fine.
You'll vote for Ebony? Okay, thank you. And then the other person category, that was split between 3 council members and another 3 council members for advertising. 3 chose Haley Thompson and 3 chose re-advertising.
Madam Clerk, have we had that one re-advertised already, or no? I couldn't remember. I'm fine with flipping mine to re-advertising to get us forward, but I couldn't remember if that was one that we'd already kind of tried that.
I would have to check on that, but I will contact Lola and then
I'm fine with flipping my vote to re-advertising.
Oh, you're okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right, then we'll re-advertise. Thank you. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, at this time, we are moving on to our next item of business, and that will be to turn to our city manager. Is that right?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the Durham City Council. For your meeting on May 2nd, I have the consent items 1 through 13, and GBA public hearings items 15 through 18.
Thank you, City Manager Pate. I'm now ready to entertain a motion to settle our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
The move by Councilwoman Caballero, seconded by Councilwoman Johnson. We will have a verbal vote. All those would sign by saying aye if they agree.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed have the same right. Hearing none. That vote passes unanimously. Are there any other items to come before the council today?
Madam Mayor, I heard from Lola. She was saying that position for other person has been re-advertised twice.
That's what I remembered, which is why I went with that.
All right.
I'll change my vote for the individual who applied.
And me too.
Okay.
All of
right.
it, I think, I definitely will. All right.
Okay,
Ms.
thank you
Thompson
very
has it.
much.
Thank you. If there are no other items to claim us, okay.
Due to my tardiness getting here, I just wanted to say, because I missed the opening announcements, tonight on ABC 11, I will join a few other community members to talk about just some of these deep issues that we discussed today, actually, how timely. And I invite my colleagues to tune in and the community to tune in and join us on the dialogue around just some of the major factors that are impacting the community at 6:30 tonight, live.
Thank you so much for your advocacy on behalf of the city of Durham. We appreciate that, and I'll definitely tune in. All right, everybody, it's been great work. We will adjourn this meeting on the 21st day of April in the Bull City at 3:39, Bull City Strong. We are hereby adjourned. Can I speak properly?